Easy and all, welcome back to the shed of shit. So as the nights draw in and the long days of summer start to fade into the distance once more, many people's thoughts, mine included, start to turn towards potentially buying a new winter project bike. Now, while I can't decide what to buy for myself, what I can do is run through a list of items that you should look at if you go and view an ER5 with the aim of buying it. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. I'd say the first and most important thing to look out for on one of these is the fuel tap. Now, I've mentioned it before on the channel, but they really are a poor quality on these bikes. It really is a case of when it's going to fail rather than will it fail. First and foremost, you want to ask the seller if they know of it being rebuilt in their ownership or prior to them taking ownership. Failing that, the best way of checking really to see if it's failed is to unscrew the oil filler cap, have a good sniff, and if it smells of fuel, you've probably got a problem with the fuel tap. Alternatively, don't be scared to open up the airbox and check for any signs of overflowing fuel. Either way, for best peace of mind, you want to rebuild the fuel tap if you buy the bike and do an oil change, then you know you're good. Rebuild kits can be had for not a lot of money, and it is a very straightforward job to do. You'll also note on this bike, if I can get a bit of light in there for the camera to see, I have put an inline fuel tap, which is where that gold piece is just underneath the tap, just for peace of mind really. I know then if the worst does happen on this bike, I can isolate the fuel supply and avoid having all of that precious fuel spilling out onto the floor and over the bike. Now, if you do want to take the airbox apart just to check to see if there is any fuel residue inside the airbox, it's really simple. So you need to take off this side panel, which is with this one screw here. I'll do this one-handed. Take that one screw off. This whole side panel then just pulls off on some locating lugs. Pull that off, and your airbox is situated just there. 3 screws to take the intake off. The air filter is directly behind, and then you can have a good look inside to see if there's any fuel residue. Next up is the Regulator Rectifier on the ER5. This is another item that has been known to fail many times on a lot of bikes. You can see it just nestling in there behind the rear wheel. Out in the elements, wind, rain, crud from the back wheel, all that nasty stuff. If it fails, it is likely going to take the battery and the clocks out with it. So the best way to monitor the health of the Regulator Rectifier is to install a voltage meter. So this is the one that I've got, and as you can see, it's not currently installed on the bike because, to be frank, it has seen better days. It's clearly seen some use over the years. It's covered in rust and corrosion and all the rest of it. The wiring looks a bit shoddy, to say the least. It is something that I plan on reinstalling very soon, so keep an eye out for that video. Now, these voltage meters can be picked up online for only a few quid, and they can potentially save you a fair few more quid than they cost. So definitely worth picking one up and installing. For reference, anything over 15 volts with the engine running and the headlight on would indicate a faulty regulator rectifier that would need replacing. Next up is the cooling system, or rather the O-rings that seal between the coolant pipes and the cylinder head. They can perish over time, and as a result the coolant starts to leak out of these little channels on either side of the engine. You can just see the left hand side one in the centre of shot here, like a little drilled hole. So if you're viewing a bike that has got coolant residue near these holes, then you need to be asking the seller if these O-rings have recently been replaced. If they haven't, then you could be looking at a bike with a coolant leak. Also, something to note that if you remove the coolant pipes to carry out routine maintenance, such as the valve clearances, then the O-rings should be replaced as part of the job, and you're going to want to use some silicone gasket to ensure that you get a complete 100% coolant proof seal. Towards the back of the bike now, you need to be looking or checking the rear drum brake. These can warp over time if heavily used and become more of an oval shape than a true wheel shape. So if you ride the bike and you have a pulsating rear brake pedal, then this could be a sign of a warped drum. There's really 2 options here. You can either pay for a new wheel or have your existing wheel skimmed to make it true again. You could, I suppose, potentially buy a second-hand wheel, but then there's always the risk of it also being warped. Remaining at the back of the bike, the last thing on the list really that I think you should probably look for is the cush drive. Over time and miles, the rubber compresses and you end up with excessive play, like you can see here on mine. So if you can move the back wheel and you get sort of a bit of play before the chain of sprockets starts to move, then you've probably got a worn cush drive. This is a rear wheel off job, and probably not something you're going to want to tackle if you're unless you're relatively confident with the spanners. So make sure to check that when you view any potential new bike. Also note on the subject of the cush drive, the whole reason it's there is to take out some of the stresses and strains from the drivetrain. So if you drive the bike, or say ride the bike even, and it feels quite clunky, for want of a better word, under acceleration and gear changes, along with the play in the rear wheel, this could also be a sign of a worn cush drive. So definitely something to be checking if you're viewing one of these bikes with the aim to buy. So that's it really, a small list of things that if you're looking for an ER5 you should check for. Obviously it's not an exhaustive list, you always have to be a little savvy when you're buying a used machine, especially one of this vintage. But having said that, this video is not designed to be a downer on the ER5 by any means. You know, they are fantastic machines, as I've said many times before. So providing you check everything that I've mentioned, you should be fairly confident in your purchase. Also, I may have missed something. There might be people watching this video and thinking, oh, you haven't mentioned, you know, X, Y, Z. Please feel free to leave a comment down below. It will help potential buyers and also teach me a few new things as well if there are things that I've missed. So please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, much more content coming soon, and I'll see you in the next one.